Hi everyone, today we are making sourdough sticky buns. These are soft, rich, buttery sourdough rolls baked over homemade caramel pecan layers. When they come out of the oven, we flip them over while they are still warm and all that caramel melts down over the buns. They are sweet, sticky, soft and perfect for a special breakfast, brunch or weekend bake. This recipe does take some time because we are using sourdough starter instead of commercial yeast, but most of the time it's just waiting for the dough to rise. The process itself is very simple and I will show you every step. First, make sure your sourdough starter is active and bubbly. The night before baking, fet your starter by mixing 20 grams of starter with 50 grams of water and 50 grams of flour. In a stand mixer bowl, add 165 grams of warm milk first. The milk should be warm, but not hot. Then add 100 grams of active sourdough starter and mix until the starter dissolves. Next, add 75 grams of sugar, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract and 1 egg. Mix everything together. Then add 370 grams of bread flour. I'm using bread flour with 11% protein. Mix everything just until no dry flour remains. I start with a Danish whisk and then knead by hand, as the dough is quite dry early on. Keep in mind that higher protein flour can make the dough appear drier at first. At this point, the dough will look shaggy, slightly dry, and not smooth yet, and that is completely normal. Cover the bowl and let the dough rest for 30 minutes. The short rest gives the flour time to fully hydrate and allows the gluten to start developing before we add the salt and butter. After 30 minutes, we need to strengthen the dough. I will be using a stand mixer, but you can knead the dough by hand if you prefer. It will just take a little longer. Sprinkle in 6 grams of salt, which is about 1 teaspoon, and 10 grams of milk to help the salt dissolve. Then start mixing the dough on medium speed. Knead for about 2 to 3 minutes, just until the salt is fully incorporated. You will notice the dough starts to feel a little tighter and more structured. Now it's time to add the butter. For this recipe we need 60 grams of very soft butter. The butter should be soft enough to blend into the dough but not melted. Add the butter slowly in 3 to 4 additions. After each addition, knead the dough until the butter is fully absorbed before adding more. At first it may look like the dough is separating or becoming greasy, but keep kneading. It will come back together. Continue kneading for about 6 to 10 minutes total, or until the dough becomes smooth, soft, elastic, and passes the window pane test. You are looking for a dough that can stretch thin enough to let light pass through without tearing right away. Since this is an enriched sourdough dough, it will be softer than regular bread dough. Once the dough is smooth and elastic, shape it into a ball and place it back into the bowl. Cover the dough and let it bulk ferment at room temperature for about 4 to 6 hours, ideally at 75 to 78 degrees Fahrenheit. During this time, the dough should become puffy, airy, and increase in volume by about 50 to 70%. It does not need to fully double. While the dough is rising, we prepare the caramel pecan layer. In a saucepan, add 100 grams of butter and melt it. Once the butter is melted, add 130 grams of brown sugar and 1.5 tablespoons of honey. Stir everything together and let it simmer for about 2 to 3 minutes. The mixture should look glossy and smooth. Then stir in 2 tablespoons of heavy cream. This makes the caramel softer and richer. Finally, chop 120 grams of pecans, add them to the caramel and stir well. I also like to add a pinch of salt, which helps balance the sweetness. Take the baking dish you plan to use and pour the warm caramel mixture with the pecan into it. Spread it evenly over the bottom and set it aside for now. Now in a small bowl mix together 110 grams of brown sugar and 1 tablespoon of cinnamon. Then set it aside as well. Once the dough has finished bulk fermentation and looks puffy, turn it out onto your work surface and gently roll it into a rectangle, roughly 14 by 12 inches. I don't use flour at this point because the dough is usually very easy to work with, but you can lightly dust the surface if needed. Just be careful not to use too much flour. Now spread 70 grams of soft butter over the surface of the dough, leaving a small border around the edges. My kitchen was pretty cold, so the butter didn't spread very easily, but that's not a problem. Then sprinkle the cinnamon sugar mixture evenly over the buttered dough and gently press it down so it adheres the dough. Now roll the dough tightly from one side into a log. Try to keep the roll even, but do not pull too hard. You want it tight enough to hold its shape, but not so tight that the bun cannot rise. Once you have a log, pinch the seam closed and gently even out the shape. Now cut it into 9 to 12 pieces, depending on how big you want your sticky buns. For larger buns, cut 9 pieces. For smaller ones, cut 12. After cutting, gently loosen the outer edge of each roll slightly so they can open up nicely while baking. Place the rolls cut side down directly over the caramel and pecan layer in the pan. Cover the pan and let the bun rise at room temperature for about 2 to 4 hours. They should look puffy, soft and airy, and they should slightly touch each other. When you gently press the dough, it should feel light and springy. When the buns are almost ready, preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. For extra moisture and richness, I pour a little heavy cream over each bun before baking. Bake the sticky buns for 30 to 35 minutes, or until the tops are golden brown and the center buns are fully baked. The caramel may bubble around the edges, and that is exactly what we want. If the buns start to brown too quickly, cover them loosely with foil and continue baking until done. Once the buns are out of the oven, let them cool in the pan for only a couple of minutes. Do not wait too long because the caramel will start to thicken and stick to the pan. While the buns are still warm, place a serving tray or large plate over the baking pan. Carefully flip everything over. Be careful because the pan and caramel are still hot. Lift the pan slowly and let the caramel flow over the buns. This is the best part. The pecans and caramel become the glossy sticky topping and the buns are soft and fluffy underneath. Let them cool slightly before serving, but they are best enjoyed warm when the caramel is still soft and the dough is tender. And that's it, sourdough sticky buns with homemade caramel and pecans. They are soft, buttery, sweet, and full of rich flavor. This is such a wonderful recipe for a cozy morning holiday breakfast, or anytime you want to make something special with your sourdough starter. If you enjoyed this recipe, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Let me know in the comments if you tried these sticky buns, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.